All right, so our next, we got a great next ministry. And so if you're familiar with the foster care system cares for kids up to age 18. And if you know any foster kids or kids in general, you know that they need a lot more support and preparation beyond age 18. So what happens then? Scott Flanagan and his wife Jackie started Compassion Planet in order to help foster kids who've aged out of the system who still need that support and preparation for a positive future. And so Scott is actually this really extraordinary example of a nonprofit leader, pastor of a community, father figure to aged out foster kids, entrepreneur who started multiple businesses in the form of social enterprise, giving jobs to all these kids, and a transformational leader. It's great to have Scott with us to tell us the story of Compassion Planet and how we can be helpful.
To share with you today and to get some input from you. I'm really looking forward to that session afterwards. So make sure there's at least 3 or 4 of you in my group, right? Don't just go to Doug, right? He's a great guy, but hang out with me too. I want to introduce you to Ahmed. And Ahmed was, when I met him a couple years ago, he's from South Sacramento, has never met his father, nor does he want to. His mom was disconnected. She was more interested in kind of the next guy, so she, just always bringing a cycle of guys through the home. Grandma kind of stepped in and brought Ahmad into her home at one point, and in doing so, actually she started molesting him. And so he went back to mom. In his early teenage years, he started running the streets. He said he started doing a lot of minor crimes and working his magic out on the streets. In high school, he met a gentleman named Jeremiah. Now, if you look at the picture, Ahmad is the one who's in the middle. Jeremiah is to the right. Jeremiah was in the foster system, and his foster parents saw the need in Ahmad's life and became unofficial foster parents to Ahmad. They found out about Compassion Planet, and both of these young men joined our group a few years ago, which was a powerful thing. Now, what happened is, after Ahmad was in our group for about 4 months, he realized these guys are on my side. They want me to succeed. They want me to help me to fulfill my dreams. So a surprise happened about 4 months into his time with us. I'll show you the picture of what happened. He got a haircut. And when he cut his hair, he did it to himself over the weekend. Now, understand, our program didn't say, Ahmad, in order to be successful, you have to cut your hair. We never said that, nor did we ever suggest it. He figured it out on his own. And what happened is, some of the youth in our program asked him, why did you do that? And he said, his hair represented his old life, and he wanted something better for his future. That's powerful, isn't it? And if you say, the old adage, a picture is worth 1,000 words, I would have thousands of words to share about this young man if I had the time. But I'm going to get the time count here pretty soon. What's really impressive is not only did this happen in his life, but this has happened there's stories like this every time a young person comes into our program. What I'd like to do right now is share a little bit about the kind of youth that we serve. As was mentioned, we work with foster youth who've aged out the system. We also work with young people who come from juvenile justice. And we work with young people who are just simply fatherless. And by the way, do you know the Old Testament word for orphan means fatherless? We define it differently. It's really young people without fathers. So I could focus on statistics today. And I could tell you about the eye-opening statistics for young people that we serve, how they're vulnerable to trafficking, to homelessness, to incarceration, to all kinds of destructive behaviors, to early rates of suicide, to cycles of violence. I could talk about that, but sometimes, when we use statistics, the mountain and it becomes so large that we're thinking, how can we ever make a difference? And so what I prefer to do today is just focus on the one. focus on Ahmad. And some problems that seem so huge are actually truly possible to achieve if you can focus on the one. Y'all remember that story that Jesus used about the parable of the good shepherd who left the 99 to go after the one? Now, if you read that from a business perspective, you'd say, what shepherd would leave 99 and go after one? And if you're focused on the 91, there might be a story there, but that's not the point of that parable. That parable is that Jesus wants you to be one who identifies with that one. He wants you to know that you're so valuable that he leaves everything. He left heaven. He left his Father's side to rescue you, to go after you. And you need to know that when young people come into our program, we want them to feel that they're the one, that we care about them, that we're going to run after them. And another place Jesus said in John 10:10, he said that the thief or the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But I've come to give life and give it more abundantly. And I don't know about you, but sometimes when you focus, and it doesn't take long to focus on how the enemy kills and steals, destroys. But one of the common denominators I've seen throughout my life, and I know you've seen it as well, he loves to disrupt and bring chaos to families. He loves young people growing up in places where they feel a lack of worth and value, and they lose their identity. And when you look at the identity crisis that exists in America today, a lot of it stems from the lack of family. Not always, but often it comes from there. And you know, life is so much harder when you don't know who you are. And in this case, you could see just 4 months of investing in a young man, he was ready to make a life change. Back in the 80s, my wife and I were youth pastors in Santa Clara, California. And a young man named Marvin, who was in our youth group, comes up to me and says, "Hey, guess what, Scott?" I go, "What, Marvin?" He goes, "I'm going to be homeless." And we were like, "Marvin, who plans to be homeless?" And he was saying, "I was in the foster system. My parents were telling me that after 2 weeks after his 18th birthday, he had to find a new living situation." So he said, "I don't know what I'm going to do, so I figured I'd live in the streets." After trying to help him, we brought him into our one-bedroom apartment where our couch became his bed, and we tried to figure out life together with him. And after about 5.5 months, we figured out how to help him become independent. And we looked back, and little did we know at the time that was actually the seeds for Compassion Planet. And I don't know about you, but sometimes the most fruitful things in our life come when God just presents a human need before us, and we step in and we answer that. And God has something bigger in mind when those moments happen. And this is how Compassion Planet began. So when you look at our mission, we simply exist to empower aged-out foster youth, juvenile justice youth, to become independent. We help them overcome obstacles, and we help them to learn how to thrive. And before I share that, I want you to understand that we believe in our organization that every young person who comes to our program, even those of us who are sitting here, that the best version of you and the youth that we serve is actually in the mind of God. And so we say, before we move forward with a young person, we want to make sure that we're partnering with God to bring about the best in and to align with his purposes for that young man's or young woman's life, and in this case, Ahmad, and to bring restoration and healing. And so that's kind of like the foundation of who we are and what we do. Sometimes people ask, well, how do you do that? How do you empower young people? This is where it gets complicated. This is where I have no elevator speech because there's not a building tall enough. But we do it, and it's quite complex. But we have a three-legged stool model. And we say in order to become independent, there's 3 things that our young people need. First is workforce development, and that's in the blue area. And about 75% of what our young people do is they're in workforce development, all right? Now, when young people come to our program, they're going to be there sometimes up to 2 years, and they're paid employees. So like right now, our payroll is close to 80 people because of our young people and our staff, right? And so they're in our workforce developments, and they get job training, on-the-job training at 12 different sites. Seven of them are social enterprises, and you can see those enterprises underneath, which doesn't show up that well. But if you've ever heard of Deer Creek Farm or Capacitant Thrift Stores or Staging Futures, Pumpkin Patch, all those are enterprises where young people get on-the-job work training. They also attend Sparks workshops throughout the week in the area of the trades, of computer tech, food service, and entrepreneurship. And those are opportunities where they get, not only they get licenses and certificates like an OSHA 10 training, but they also learn skills that are durable for their own lives, but also we see when sparks arise in a certain area, we say that might be a good career path for them. The second part is what we call compass classes. And compass classes are where young people learn the skills and close the gap in the skills that they didn't learn while they were during their upbringing, right? And it can be simple things or they can be a little bit more complex. But there's pragmatic things they learn, like career building, they learn finance and how to budget. And then there's different complex things that are harder skills like emotional intelligence or relational skills. The final part is what we look at as therapy, and we do one-to-one coaching, so each person hangs out with one of our therapists, whether it be a licensed clinical social worker or an MFT who's on our staff, and they just get coaching through their own issues. So the idea is each person has a need, and we try to fill that. By the time they graduate, they move into what we call our aftercare program, which is pretty powerful as well. Here's our milestone moments. We realized that we needed to find a way to impact more lives in Sacramento. And so how we did that was through really the conversation with one of the leaders of the Walter Johnson Foundation. And after we saw what our need was, we went to the drawing board. At that time, we were only reaching about 19 to 22 kids per year. And we said, okay, how do we up our game? And she said that funding would be more available to us if we did that. So we had to ask the question, do we want to stay in our model as existed, or do we want to have a greater impact? And the next calendar year, we went from reaching somewhere between 19 and 22 youth to 59 youth, right? And so our impact increased. But it also presented another issue that we realized that we need to strengthen our wraparound services and find partners on the back end. So that's what leads to our big challenge today. We have 72 youth each year in the Sacramento region that we could work with. But without employer partners at the back end, young people tend to stall in our program, and they could possibly graduate 2 to 5 months earlier. So here's our big question. How can we position our interns, these are young people like Ahmad, how can we position our interns to secure short-term apprenticeships with local businesses and trades that will prepare them for successful careers and help them break cycles? Had we been able to do that with Ahmad, he still may be working at Dignity Health right now, because when he graduated, he got an assignment that we don't know if it was short-term, long-term, because we didn't have a relationship with Dignity Health. And so he basically, after about 3 months, he had to go find a new job. We want partners. And the kind of partners we want is the kind of people who live in this room today. What I love about presenting is that I'm excited about being able to talk with people who are kingdom-minded and business-minded. And the power of that is amazing. And those are the kind of people that we need to help us move forward. Now, if you help today in kind of our roundtable session, I think we're going to be somewhere around here. Here's some of the things that will happen. You'll be able to help us close the gaps on some of the foundational life skills that our young people are missing. And by the way, that gap can be huge. And you know that when there's gaps in those life skills, then they're going to be, basically, it's hard for them to advance in their lives. Also, to break through on personal barriers. Barriers really they can lead to missed opportunities, right? You could help us rewire their scarcity mindset and break through some of that generational poverty. You could help dismantle negative influences and actually help create louder voices in their life. Or you could create short-term safety nets. one thing, that's probably what Ahmad needed when he was at Dignity Health. He probably needed some kind of a safety net, and communication with Dignity could have helped them maybe thrive there in a longer way. Now, if that doesn't work for you, here's a couple other opportunities. You could tour our upcoming floral and garden market, which is a new enterprise that we'll be launching. So if you're like into business startups, I'd love to get some input and creativity from you on that. You can also tour our Newcastle, Compassion Ranch, and that's where our training center is for the trades. And again, just seeing what we do there, that's just kind of something that's newer in our program. So I love just creative minds, innovation, to find better ways to serve our young people. Or you could actually help us expand our impact. There have been numerous people throughout the past few years in numerous states, numerous cities, who want to bring Compassion Planet to their region. And so we're trying to look at what would franchise models look like. So if you have any insight into that, that would be fantastic as well. As we wrap it up here today, I wanted to show you kind of a closing picture of Ahmad. This is a picture of him after he achieved mobility. That's one of our programs, is helping young people achieve mobility through getting a driver's license, and in this case, we helped him get his first car. He's smiling big because he just passed his DMV test. And today, Ahmad is actually working at Chipotle. He's going to be in the management program. When he was in our system, he actually advanced at our restaurant in Sacramento, and he became a supervisor, so he definitely has the skills to thrive and succeed there. And I want to just thank you so much for the opportunity to share today, and I look forward to the conversations that we're going to have.